So I just deleted my MI because it's costing me a lot. So I just deleted that. And this is my setup, guys. Let me show you my resource groups first. Okay, not resource group. I should show you virtual networks. So I have 3 virtual network, guys. One is domains virtual machines VNet and something by name Azure AD VNet. And this one is, you can ignore this. So today we are going to work only with these 2 networks, 2 VNets. One is domain VMs VNet. The other one is Azure AD VNet. Domain VMs VNet contains 2 machines, domain controller and node 1, but still I didn't add the machine to the domain controller. So I will be working only on this machine. So this is just an work group machine. Okay, this is not part of any domain. This is just a work group machine, just a VM. That's it. And this guy, Azure AD VNet, this guy contains my SQL server, my Azure PaaS. Okay, so two VNets, 2 virtual networks. One is domains VM VNet and the other one is Azure AD VNet. And Azure AD VNet contains my Azure SQL. So let me show you my Azure SQL. So I have one Azure AD SQL and one VM. That's it, nothing else. So a plain vanilla setup, what we have. So I would like to show you how the connectivity works when it comes to connecting from your local laptop, or I mean to say from the internet or from the virtual machines. So how it works. So that is what my main demo is all about today. So if you have any questions now, please stop me, and or else I will just continue and I'll upload this video in YouTube for your reference. Got the scenario. So we have one SQL server, Azure SQL server, Azure PaaS, and one VM and a local laptop. Mine is the local laptop. So I will be connecting with my local laptop as well as from the virtual machine to the Azure SQL. So how the connectivity works, that is what we are going to see. If no questions, I will just move forward. Fine, right? Okay.
For Azure SQL database.
Yes, this is not MI. This is Azure SQL database, not at all MI. Okay, no MI. So this is how it looks. I'm going to delete everything. It will be pretty normal. Delete, nothing is there. Let me talk to stop. Okay, nothing, no private access, nothing. So everything is default. Okay, so this is my Azure AD SQL, and I'm going to connect to this Azure SQL from my local laptop and from my Azure VM and see how it works. So there are few differences, so that I just wanted to highlight that part. Okay, so now first I'll copy this server name and I'm going to fire a command prompt from my local laptop, and I'm firing ns lookup for this. Okay, this is what I got when I fired this from local laptop. And let me go to my VM. This is my VM. And I'm firing the same command, ns lookup. So I got the same result, more or less. Forget about this one. So I will talk about this later. So for just think about the second section. So this is what I got. The address is 13.74.104.113, and most likely I got the same address, 13.74.104.113. So, and at the bottom I got few aliases: Azure AD SQL, the server name, and something like data slices and traffic management. So do you know anything about this data slices and traffic manager? And what is this IP? From where I got this IP? So this is an interactive session, guys. It will be super interesting, believe me. So once we are done with the session, you will get to know so many things. So what is that slices? What does that slice means, and what does this traffic manager means? So this is what I'm going to talk. If you are aware, just let me know. Express yourself. Okay, so let me pull out this. Okay, so this is what the architecture, how it has been configured with Azure SQL, and most probably it is the same for Azure MI also, with few differences. So at the front end, when you are trying to connect, so This is your Azure SQL, right? So these are our Azure SQLs. And when you are trying to connect to your Azure SQL, so first you have to reach to the gateways. Gateway is nothing but a kind of what can I say, a kind of connectivity where it accepts the public IPs and it responds and it passes the connection to the Azure SQL. So that's the reason when you fire uh, NS lookup for your Azure SQLs, you will get a public IP. What is public IP? So any IP leaving out the 10 or 172 or 192 series, it is public IP. Okay, so that's the reason whenever we fire any NS lookup from your local laptop or from your Azure virtual machines, you'll get this IP, some public IP. So in my case, I'm getting 1374.104.113. Okay, so the same IP is appearing inside my virtual machine also. So even you can try this in your environments. If you're having, if you don't have private endpoints, so definitely you'll get the public IPs, something like this. Okay, and there are few dedicated IPs. Even the public gateway IPs are dedicated, and you can check this in the Microsoft documentation. They have listed somewhere, and I am not sure where they have listed, but definitely I read somewhere that they have listed these IPs too. So that's the reason we are seeing this IP. And at the bottom, you are seeing some data slices and traffic manager. So what is data slice and what is traffic manager? Okay, that is the next question. So before going to talk about data slices and traffic manager, there is one important topic that we want to be aware of. So when it comes to networking on the Azure SQL and when it goes to the connectivity, uh, you might have seen this connection policy. There are three different types of connection policies. One is default, no need to talk about this, and one is proxy and one is redirect. So do you know anything about proxy and redirect? What is the difference between proxy and what is the difference between redirect? So what is the best way to connect, whether it is proxy or it should be redirect? Anything that you are aware? Open up, guys, no problem.
No, Vamsi.
Okay, so proxy is if you want to connect to your Azure SQL from the internet, means from my local laptop or where we don't have private endpoint. So you'll be connecting with proxy. Okay, proxy, how proxy works, I will tell you now, and how redirect works. I'll talk about that as well. So redirect is used when you are inside the Azure environment. Say for example, when I want to talk to my Azure SQL from my Azure VM, so it will be making use of redirect. Okay, and when I want to talk from my local laptop to Azure SQL, it will make use of proxy. So why they have introduced two different methodologies, proxy and redirect? So I will just explain that. So what is the best method to connect to the proxy and what whether it is proxy or redirect? So what is the difference between proxy and redirect? So there are three questions lined up. So first thing is, what is proxy? What is redirect? Okay, so let me go to this. So this is what proxy does. So proxy, the problem with proxy is it has to reach to the gateway and it has to talk to the Azure SQL. Okay, in a similar fashion, redirect also has to reach to your gateway and it has to talk to the SQL. But thing is, when it comes to redirect, once the connection gets established, it will not connect again to the gateway. It will establish the connection directly and it will talk to the Azure SQL. Means we can cut short that extra round trip. Okay, so see, it has to bypass this. So this is my internet. Imagine this is my mission. And when it talks to my Azure SQL, it has to go through this gateway every time when you use proxy. But when you establish redirect, what happens is that redirect only works within the Azure environment, guys. It will not work from the public facing machines like internet or something like that. It will not work. It only works for Azure machines. So once we establish redirect, okay, so this is the line. When we connect to the Azure from outside, the default behavior is proxy, whereas within the Azure, it is redirect. The advantage with redirect is it need not go to the gateway server every now and then. Okay, so that is the beautiful thing. So when you have charty applications or when you have an application that talks more to the Azure SQL, you have to make use of redirect, not proxy. Okay, so when you are trying to connect with redirect, you have to open the ports on your environment. Like these are the ports 110, sorry, 11,000 to 11,999. So these ports should be enabled for the redirect. Okay, so that's the reason they have introduced two connectivity methods. One is proxy and the other one is redirect, because every organization will not allow you to open these range of ports, right? Definitely they will not. I mean, few secured organizations, they will not allow you to open this range of ports. If that is the case, you have to go with proxy. And if your organization is okay to open the ports like 11,000 to 11,099, then you have to make use of redirect. And also if you have a bigger application or a chatty application, you have to make use of redirect. So did you get the difference between proxy and redirect? When should I use proxy? When should I use redirect? So proxy is used by default when you are trying to access from your local laptops, and redirect is used when you are trying to access from Azure virtual machines. Okay, and if your environment or if your organization is not allowing you to open these ports, by default it will be proxy. What is the difference between proxy and redirect? How it works? Proxy has to reach the gateway and then it has to talk to the Azure SQL DB, whereas redirect DB, it only happens only for the very first time from, and then it will make use of same connectivity, and it will need not go to the gateway every now and then. So that is the difference. Any questions here? So you have to get 3 points here: proxy, redirect, and when should I use, and what is the difference? Got it or not? Go ahead. Vijay, Vinay, Vinod, Prithvi, Manju, Jyoti.
Can you come again with the proxy?
I think someone is trying to reach me, but
Yeah, I was saying, can you come again with this proxy and that's it? I didn't get it actually.
which what exactly that you want me to come again?
Yeah, you said through proxy it will go to that gateway,
Yes,
and for that other one I didn't see.
redirect. It is redirect. So if you
Redirect.
see the
Redirect.
diagram here, so proxy, it is going to my gateway and it's talking to Azure SQL DB, right? And the second one, from my mission, redirect, it will reach here, okay? And then it is coming back with a reply. So every first it establishes the connection to Azure SQL, okay? So from here it will establish, but from the next time, it need not contact the gateway. It can directly go and talk to my Azure SQL. So once the connection gets established, I can eliminate the extra step. That's the difference. And for chatty applications, you have to use redirect, and for connectivity purpose, you have to open these ports. That's the problem with redirect. So if your organization is not allowing, you cannot use redirect. You have to go with proxy. That's the reason we have two different types. One is proxy and the other one is redirect. So that's the reason if you opt for Azure, when you create the Azure SQL, definitely it will be by default. Default is the way. So it checks automatically and it will redirect accordingly, whether it is proxy or redirect based on whether you're connecting from the internet or whether you're connecting from Azure VMs, whether the ports are opened or not. So I will show you in practical these things also. Don't worry. So if you are comfortable, then I will move ahead with the next topic. It will be super interesting. I don't know if someone misses this, they can watch out the YouTube, but you are in the live session. So please feel free to talk with me. If you have questions, it's absolutely fine to break me up. Okay. So I'm moving now. So I hope you got the difference between proxy and redirect. Okay. And now let's connect to the Azure AD SQL. Okay. And I'm going to the networking section. It is absolutely empty. Nothing is there. So if I try to connect now, definitely I will not be able to connect. So let's do this. SQL cmd-s. So it is saying, I got the below error message. It is saying cannot open the server. Client with IP address is not allowed to access to the server. So if I want to access my Azure SQL from my local laptop, I have to add my IP so that it will allow me to connect. So this, I think this is very simple. Everyone knows about this. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So let me go to my portal and I'm adding my client IP here. Okay, that's it, nothing else. So I'm coming from the basics, guys. So it will be very easy for you to understand as well. So I'm done. So now if I fire the same query, so I am in now. So if if anyone wants to connect from their internet, they have to add the IP ranges accordingly, right? They have to add, if it is just a one machine, right? So I just added my IP. If you're having set of machines, then you have to add that IP addresses what you have. Okay, nothing great here. And if I want to connect from Azure VM, and if I want to talk to my Azure SQL, what should I do? Will it connect now? Shall we give a try? SQL CMD -S. Why it is, why I'm able to talk to my, what is this, from Azure VM without adding anything? How it is working? Okay, let me open Management Studio if you're not comfortable with SQL CMD. Guys, did you get my point? I didn't add my VM's IP or something like that, but still I am able to access it.
So both are in Azure, right? VM is also in Azure. So that's why actually it's open, right?
No. See, VM is not having any interface to talk to my Azure SQL. If you see here, I'm opening the networking part and public access. I just added my IP, my laptop IP. That's it. There is nothing else, right? Let
Okay.
me. So how it is getting connected? Let's wait for it, this SSMS. In the meanwhile, just pass your answers. Anyone?
Through proxy.
But even to connect to the proxy, I need some mechanism, right? Okay, let's wait for SSMS because to fire the queries, it is little challenging here. Let's wait for it.
Yeah, I guess actually, so we added in the internet, local internet option in the proxy for the for doing your laptop to the interface to internet. So that's why actually, so we can able to your cache instance, right?
It's not very clear. So let's, any other guess? Let's just wait for it. I should have opened this before. This is taking more time. Okay, so now we are in. Okay, I am able to talk to my Azure SQL. So let's see from where I'm getting connected. So let's see that. And to find out that, we can make use of EXCC connections. So if you see, this is the public IP of my virtual machine. Okay, so that is the client net address. So if you, so I'm getting connected to Azure SQL from my VM. So my question is how I am able to connect without adding any anything like, okay, let me show you one other thing also. Select star from firewall rules. So this is the firewall rule what I added, right? My client IP 188.141 something. So I added this IP, but I didn't add the public IP of this virtual machine, but still I am able to get the connection. If you see, this is the proof that it shows clearly that I created this rule and I'm able to access from my local laptop, right? But how I am able to access from my virtual machine without adding any anything, any IP or something like that. So if I want to do, actually I have to go here and add, and I need to add the public IP, right? 20.20, what is this? 223.205. I need to add this IP, but without adding the IP itself, I'm able to connect. So how I am able to do this? Usually, usually what you have to do, you have to go here and you have to add your public IP, right? But still I am able to access this. So if you are aware of this, let me know, or else I will keep this aside and I will explain this later, because I have done few things. So that's the reason I'm able to connect. So first thing first, how I have to connect. So I'm coming from the basics. You have to use firewall rules. Here I have to add the Azure virtual machines IP if I want to connect. Anyways, it is getting connected. It's fine. Leave out that. I will talk about that internal later. So I have to go here, add that client net address here and specify the rule name, like maybe VM, and add it, and it will get connected. So that is the first part. So I'm just covering up the firewall rules. So once the firewall rules get added, then only you will be able to access the Azure SQL. Okay, got it? First thing first, if I have to access the Azure SQL from Azure VM, I have to add the VM IP here. Otherwise, I will not be able to talk. Any questions here? No questions? Clear? Can I move forward? Okay. So what if I check this checkbox? It says exceptions and it says allow Azure services and resources to access this server. What happens if I do this? Anyone knows this? Okay, I'm doing this. Okay, allow Azure services and resources to access this server, and I'm clicking on save. Okay, it got saved. And now let's go to the same Azure VM and now fire the new query and see the differences now. Okay. So I'm firing the client net address. So definitely it will be the same IP, the VM IP. And how about the firewall rules? Did anything got changed with this? Let's see. So I didn't add any firewall rule, guys. So, but it got added internally. Okay, it got added internally and it says starting IP is 0 and then ending IP is 0. So when you check this checkbox internally behind the scenes, you will get a firewall rule that gets added automatically, just like what I have done. So I came here and added my local laptop's IP, right? In the similar fashion, when you check this checkbox, there will be special IP, not special IP, every IP. So that's the starting range and that's the ending range. So all the services, doesn't matter from which region or which resource group, doesn't matter at all. So all the Azure resources will be able to talk to my Azure SQL if I check this checkbox. So don't use this in real time, and you can use this only when there are no other means to connect. Any questions? Again, I'm repeating. So you have to use this only when there are no other means to connect to Azure SQL. Say, for example, from Power BI or Azure Data Factory, maybe imagine that you don't have privileges to create private endpoint and you have to talk from Azure Data Factory or Power BI and maybe some other applications. Okay. And if I want to talk to my Azure SQL, then we can enable this box, but in real time, this is not recommended because this poses a security risk. So if you just check this checkbox, automatically this firewall rule gets appended and you will not see this inside the portal, and you can check this only from sys.firewall rules. That is the second concept. Any questions now?
We can connect from any network.
Any network from anywhere in the world, you can connect happily once you enable this. But don't do this in real time because it's a security risk. Unless and until if you don't have any other means, then only you should go to this option. Otherwise, you should not use this option. Okay, clear? So first one is firewall
So
rules.
is it like you are opening your, I mean, giving access to all? I mean, is it like a opening firewall for all? Like
Yes,
000?
zero means there is no, I mean, everyone can connect happily. There is no exception, and I'm allowing to connect. I'm opening all the IP addresses to connect. So this is highly risky. And if I hover this, it says this option configures the firewall to allow connections from IP addresses allocated to any Azure service or asset, including the connections from the subscription of other customers. Even the other customers can access this. Okay. So that's the reason you will see the IP getting appended automatically and you will not see inside the portal. You can check this only from this DMV.
I'm saying one more thing.
Yeah.
Azure SQL is a PaaS, right?
Yes.
So Azure must have set up its own VM, or not own VM, yeah, own VM and own.
No, stop
VNet.
there. No, so stop there. So Azure SQL is a PaaS. Unlike Azure MI, it doesn't have any virtual network. Okay, Azure SQL will not have any virtual network, guys. That is very, very important. You have to understand. It's virtual network is only applicable for virtual machines and managed instance. There is
No,
no
no,
concept
I'm
of virtual
saying
network.
that should be in Azure. They will not reveal what is there, right? Under the need, they must be having their own network, right? Where they have set up those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, they might have their own network. What I am saying
Yeah.
is, when you are creating the Azure SQL, there is no option for you to select the VNet. VNet
Yes,
is,
yes, yes, yes,
yeah,
definitely. It will not be there
yeah,
because it's in their own way.
yes.
I mean, it's in their own setup. It will be managed by them only. But what I'm trying to understand, I mean, at least in GCP we have a
No, no, don't
concept of yeah.
go with the GCP.
No,
So when you
I just
bring that,
wanted to understand the endpoint connection.
that is
Still
different.
I don't
That is
understand.
different. Endpoint, will come to that endpoint. I will talk about endpoint in a couple of minutes. But this
Okay.
is a special thing in Azure SQL, where if you enable this checkbox, you can talk from anywhere else. Okay, there is no restriction. That
Yeah,
is the important thing.
I guess others are cloud provider also providing you this thing. Like if they are giving you public IP, connect to the public IP, and there you are allowed to attach that connect to that public IP from anywhere. I mean, this is what I had seen in RDS and even GC,
I don't know about
Google Cloud.
RDS or GCP, so I
Yeah.
cannot comment. But I'm just talking about
I mean,
Azure and Azure
I'm trying
SQL.
to understand. Will there be? I mean, you had shown us the public IP over there in SSMS query
Yeah,
which you had fired. So
yeah.
was that like they are giving you the public IP
No, no, no.
to
Public
connect?
IP is only for my local laptop to connect. That's it. Game over. Okay, there is no
Yeah.
public IP concept again. So this is a special kind of mechanism where they are allowing to access your resources without adding any IPs. Okay, you don't know it to connect,
Okay.
and if you want to interact from Azure, I'm not saying from internet. Again, I'm repeating, this is only
Mhm.
from Azure environment. Any resources inside the Azure can talk to my Azure SQL if I enable this checkbox. Not my,
Okay.
okay, I'll show you now. Let's do this. Okay, I'm removing this my client IP. Okay, let's save this, and let's try to connect from a local laptop now and see if that works. See, straight away it says, okay, let me move this down. It says client with IP address is not allowed to access this server. So this option is still there, right?
Okay.
This option is there,
Yeah.
but that option is only meant for Azure resources, not from the public internet. There is a difference here. That's what you have to understand.
Okay.
Now I am not able to access my Azure SQL from my local laptop. But if I go here and if I try to connect again, let's try to do it from here. Control C, CLS. I'm able to connect, right? So that's the difference.
Yes.
Okay, now both the ways, what I have shown till now, allow Azure services and firewall rules is not the best option at all. There are some other best options that you want to make use of. So one is virtual network, the other one is private access. What is virtual network? When you add the virtual network, what happens is that behind the scenes, I can talk to my Azure SQL with service endpoints. Okay, so you just mentioned something, Chetan. So service endpoints, the concept comes here. Means if my Azure SQL wants to talk,
Okay.
if anyone wants to talk to my Azure SQL, and I can protect this by adding only the VNets that are okay to access. Okay, I have 3 VNets here. At the beginning, I have shown you. Let me go to the virtual networks. So I have Azure AD VNet, domain VMs VNet, and my new VNet. Forget about this. I don't have any missions here. So when I add this domains VM VNet, then it will be able to access my Azure SQL. If I have some other VNets, if I want that to talk with my Azure SQL, I have to add that VNets using service endpoint. Service endpoint is a feature where they have introduced in 2017 or 2018. I'm not sure what exact year that is. So that is more secured way of connecting to our Azure SQL. Okay, so you have to make use of service endpoints if you don't have private endpoints. Let me go to Azure SQL again. Okay, let me go to networking. Now I'm deleting this and I'm clicking on save. Okay, and how to enable this endpoint, service endpoint? Service endpoints are tied with subnets. So I'll show you now. Let me go to VNets. and this is my VM VNet. So if I go to the subnet, I have only one subnet. If you click on subnet, there is one thing called as service endpoint inside the subnet. So what service you want to talk to? So these are all the different services in Azure SQL. What we have: Event Hub, Key Vault, Service Bus, SQL, Storage, Web, everything. So if I want, I have to click on this Microsoft SQL so that it will allow us to talk to Azure SQL using this service endpoint. It will create the service endpoint here. Okay, if you don't want to do it from here, you can do it straight away from your Azure SQL also. Let's go to Azure SQL. Okay, let's go to the networking, and I need to add that VNet. Okay, so let's pass some rule here. So I'm just going with the defaults since this is just a demo. So I have to pick the right VNet. So where my VM is located, my VM is located inside this domain VM's VNet. So I'm picking that VNet. Okay, and this is the only subnet what I have. If you have multiple subnets, you have to choose the right subnet. And if you see here, straight away it says selected subnet doesn't have service endpoint enabled for Microsoft SQL. Enabling the access may take up to 15 minutes to complete. So if you don't want the service point to be enabled, you can click on this ignore. Okay, so what happens when I do this, I will let you know once I'm done with this. So if you want to talk to your Azure SQL securely, the best option is virtual networks. Okay, when you don't have private access is the best part. Leaving out the private access, if you don't have the private access, the best feature to connect to Azure SQL from your Azure virtual machines is service endpoints. That's the best way to connect. So let me do this from subnet. I will go here and I will pick my subnet of virtual machine, and I will click on this and I'll just select Microsoft SQL. So it will create a new service endpoint for me. Click on save. So let it get saved. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, let me know. So you guys are aware of all the things what I'm showing, the different ways. Okay, are you in meeting or busy with some other work? I don't know. Okay, it got created now. And let's go to our Azure SQL and go to the networking. And now I'm trying to add a virtual network rule. Okay, and I have to pick the domain VM's VNet. And if you see, service point endpoint status is now enabled because I enabled that from subnet. That's the reason you are seeing this enabled. Click on OK. So once it gets created, and see what happens. It will take some time. Okay, it got created now. So it's ready now. Its status is showing as ready. Let's go and let's fire this again from new query window. Let me just disconnect and connect to be on a safer side. New query. And see the beauty, guys. You have to understand this. Till now, you are able to connect from my virtual machine using the public IP, right? So when I fired this query, I think previously it was showing me 20.223. I mean the public IP of the VM. But now suddenly it got changed, and now it is showing 172.16.0.5. Do you know why? Why it got changed from public IP to private IP? This is private IP. I will show you now. IP config. So if you see, the IP of my machine is 172.16.0.5. Exactly, it is showing me the same thing.
And the machine actually added in the VNet, so that's why.
No. See, you have to understand the concepts very clearly here. That's why I'm stressing this again and again.
We
Okay.
have created a service endpoint due to
Yes,
that.
service endpoint has been created, and service endpoint, the beauty of the service endpoint is you can access your Azure resources. I mean to say here Azure SQL, okay, using the private IP addresses, not the public IP addresses. So that's how we restricted the public IP connectivity. Okay, so you have to always think from private endpoints or private IP addresses, not the public ones. Public ones are not the best way to connect your Azure resources, whether it is storage or SQL or Cosmos, whatever it is, you have to access your resources via the private means, not via the public means. So once I did this virtual network, once I added this, so once I created the service endpoint, now my virtual machine is contacting the Azure SQL using the private IP, not the public IP. That's the difference, guys. Did you get this or not? Till now, when I find this select star from, client address, client net address from system EXCC connections, I was getting the public IP, but suddenly now it got changed to private IP. Why? Why? Because I have enabled the service endpoint. Once you enable the service endpoint, it will allow you to connect using the private IPs, not the public IPs. Got this point? Any questions? So now, till now, you have seen 3 different ways to connect. One is adding the firewall rule. So this is not the best way. The other one is allow Azure services. Once you click this box, it will add a default firewall rule with 0.0. So you'll be able to connect happily without adding any such rules, but it is not a good practice. And the third one is service endpoint. This is the third way to connect. Okay, so I have till now you have seen 3 different ways to connect to Azure SQL. Now let's go to the private access. Before going to the private access, if you have any questions, let me know, or else I will continue with private access.
Yeah, Vamsi, just now you connected from your Azure VM or your local laptop?
No local laptop. I didn't add my local IP, so this is my local laptop. Okay, if you see, it will say your IP has not been added, so nothing. Everything is from Azure VM.
So if we want to, like, we can add, then we can connect from local laptop.
Only when you add this IP, then only you can connect. So local laptop is nothing but a kind of public interface, means internet.
Yeah.
Treat this as internet. And when you are trying to connect from internet to Azure SQL, you have to add that relevant IP, public IP. But here from Azure VM, you don't need to add your public IPs. That's the beauty. That's why you have to make use of service endpoints. Once you create the service endpoint and once you add that relevant virtual network, you will talk to your Azure SQL using the private IP addresses, not the public IP addresses. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Even though if you want to connect like outside, like just like you
outside
said, when
means when you're saying outside, we
not
have
Azure resource, Azure resource, like
yeah.
Someone is trying to connect application or whatever the
Yeah.
database Azure
Yeah.
SQL.
Yeah.
So in that case also the service point will
Yes.
there is no issues.
No issues. You can add your relevant VNet. Say, for example, your Power BI application or Azure Data Factory or some other application is residing in one VNet. Okay, you just need to add that VNet. Once you add that VNet by enabling the service endpoint, you can talk from those applications to Azure SQL using the private IP addresses. But you don't have, if you don't have any VNets and you if the application is hosted somewhere else, say for example from internet, then no other go. You have to access this using this option, allow Azure services.
Okay, got it.
Okay, now let's move on. So I told you that at the beginning we have data slices and traffic manager, right? When you fire NS lookup. So let me fire that again. So we got this output again, data slices and traffic manager. So previously I was getting 13 dot something IP, but now it got changed to 52. Why it got changed from 13 to 52? Why? Because behind the scenes we have traffic manager. Traffic manager is the one that is redirecting our traffic to the relevant gateways. First topic you have to understand is gateways. Gateways are present at the beginning, and we have inside the gateways we have data slices, and this is being managed by traffic manager. Traffic manager, as the name says, it is diverting the traffic based on the needs, based on the traffic. So when you fire the query, at one point you got 13, and when I'm firing this now I got 52. So they are getting deferred, means the traffic manager is diverting my traffic from 13 public IP address gateway to 52 public IP address gateway. So that's the reason you should not copy this address and go and you should not add this to that, what is that, etc/host. You should not do such type of things, because this is public IP and it will get changed completely. It will not be only one IP, it will get changed automatically, because traffic manager is there that is diverting our traffic. So that's the internal things when it comes to this IP address, gateway IP addresses. So how Azure architecture is crafted, Azure architecture is crafted in such a way that we have in the front end, we have gateways, and inside the gateways, we have data slices, and this will be managed by traffic manager. That's the reason when you fire NS lookup, you will get three different things: the server name, the data slices where your gateway is part of, and the relevant traffic manager. Okay, any questions? No questions? Comfortable? Okay, so now let's move on to private connectivity. So I will delete this now. After creating the private access, I will delete. So why we got the concept of private access when we have the service endpoint? What is the problem? Anyone who is aware, like when we are able to talk to Azure SQL from service endpoints, why again private endpoints? We have two topics here. One is service endpoint, the other one is private endpoint. Just now we saw the service endpoint, how it works, and now we are going to see private endpoint. Okay, any questions before going to private endpoint? Or if you are aware of private endpoint, you can talk now. What is private endpoint and why it is required? No questions? Nothing? Okay. Let's go to the private access, and I have to create the private endpoint. Before creating the private endpoint, okay, so private endpoint is nothing but it will create one network interface. It will create a network card from this VNet, okay, and it will assign one private IP, and this IP doesn't get changed and it will remains the same. That's the beauty of private endpoint. Private endpoint is nothing but inside your virtual network, okay, it will pick one IP addresses, one free IP addresses, and it will create one network interface card, and this will remains the same. It will remains the same. The IP addresses will not get changed. So private endpoints for connection strings remains unchanged. On-premises can connect to my Azure SQL using this private endpoint. When you are creating the private endpoint, you are creating it with at the highest level. That is the highest level of security that you have to make use of when you are dealing with Azure SQLs in your real-time environment. You have to always make use of private endpoints, not even the service endpoints, guys. Service endpoint is okay. That is somewhat more secured when compared to other two methodologies like firewall rules or allow Azure services. But the best method to connect to the Azure SQL from outside world is private endpoints, because it will create a network card and it will create one IP and it will associate that IP to your Azure SQL. I'll show you now. Before going to talk about before creating private endpoints, any questions? See, these are all the different ways to connect to your Azure SQL. I've shown you three now. This is the fourth one. Okay, no questions. So this is interactive session, guys. So again, I'm repeating, please talk. Okay, so I'm creating the private endpoint now. So what is a private endpoint? As I said, use private endpoints to privately connect to your service or resource. Your private endpoint must be in the same region as your virtual network. So this is the main point. Your private endpoint must be in the same region as your virtual network. So where is my virtual network? So as I was shown you, I have domains VM network where my VM is part of. This is my VM, and this is part of my region North Europe. Okay, this is the North Europe. So when I'm creating the private endpoint, it should be in North Europe. It has to be in the same region as the description says. Okay, so let's go to the Azure AD SQL and go to the networking, and let's go to the private access, create private endpoint. So I'm picking the resource group. Let it be the same resource group of SQL. No, nothing to worry about here. Or else you can create domain VMs. You can create it anywhere. Okay, so let's create the private endpoint. So I will say this as SQL 27 VM. Okay, it will get I will say SQL node private endpoint. Endpoint. Need to drop off. Okay, no problem. So let's move to the resource. So it is picking up automatically the SQL server. Okay, and this is the important part, virtual network, from where you want to talk to your Azure SQL. So my virtual network is domains VM VNet, and SQL VM is my virtual machine is part of this VNet. So I have to select this virtual network, not where your Azure SQL is part of. Okay, it has to be the target. My target, sorry, it has to be your source. My source is virtual machine and my target is Azure SQL. So I'm choosing the source is nothing but my Azure virtual machine. So I have to select this. So let's go to the DNS part, and it will create one DNS automatically. So there is a lot of concept behind this, but let's keep it aside. DNS, and just click on tags and create it. It will get created. So what are the things what I have done here? You have to select the resource group. You have to pass on one name, and you have to select the right virtual network for you to talk. Click on create. It will take 1 or 2 minutes for its completion. Once it gets connected, once it gets created, you will see the other IP addresses automatically. Let's wait for it. Before it happens, I have to show you one thing. Even when I do NS lookup here, I'll close this, it's not required. NS lookup, even here I'm getting 1374 104 something, but if you see suddenly something got created, some extra thing, Azure AD SQL private link dot database dot windows.net, it got created. Let's wait for it. Once it gets created, if you will see the NS lookup IP addresses would get changed automatically. Let's wait for another minute or so. I don't think it will take a minute, maybe less than a minute. It will create one DNS zone, it will create one NIC card, and it will create one more rule automatic, one host record, not rule, one host record.
Here we are creating private endpoint for the Azure SQL.
Yes,
Right?
yes. Private endpoint for your Azure SQL, where our source is Azure VM.
Source means I'm not getting exactly.
So from
like,
where you are trying to access your Azure SQL, from your virtual machine, right? My virtual machine is my source.
Okay.
So I want to
So
talk.
yeah. We are creating using this source, like just like dedicated connection, like
Yes,
from source
yes,
to destination.
yes.
Okay.
You are creating a secure channel, a private endpoint where the connections from the source will talk to Azure SQL using a private endpoint. Okay, so it is different from service endpoint. You don't need to do any extra setup for service endpoint, but for private endpoint, there are few things that gets created internally.
Okay. One question:
Okay.
if you want to add one more resource, like one more source, then we need to create one more private endpoint.
No, it's not required. One private endpoint is good enough, and I will show you.
I mean, to other resource,
I
like
got
other
your
VM,
question.
like
I got your
yeah.
question. Let me show you. So this got completed. Go to the resource. Okay. So if I go to the DNS, so it created this IP 172.16.0.6. As I told you, it will create one network interface card. It got created, and it will create one IP addresses associated with that network interface card automatically, and it will create some DNS zone. Okay. There are three things that gets created. Let's keep this aside and let's go to our Azure virtual machine. Okay. And let's fire this up. And suddenly, as you can see right now in front of you, from 13.74.104, some gateway IP, from your gateway IP, it got changed to your private endpoint network interface card IP. That is the IP what it got created, right? 172.16.0.6. From when I'm trying to access this from virtual machine. So how it got created? It got created behind the scenes. And when we fire up NS lookup, from 13.74, it got changed to private IP address of that network interface card, what it got created internally when you create the private endpoint. Any questions here? This is very, very, very important to understand the differences between private way of connecting and public way of connecting to our Azure SQL. Okay. So once you create the private endpoint, you will see the network interface card that got created. That IP will be shown here from the gateway IP. Initially at the beginning, I told you there will be gateway IPs, right? So now the traffic will not be hitting the gateway IP. So it is going directly to the private endpoint. Of course, it will be hitting internally, but now these IPs will not appear. You will not see the public IPs. You will see only the private IPs, private endpoint IP, whatever that got created. Any questions here? Okay, now let's perform the same thing and see what IP will I get. So for the service endpoint, as you can see, I got the private IP addresses, right? Private IP addresses of my virtual machine 172.16.0.5. Now let's connect and see what happens. And you can see again, it is using the private IP, but the only thing is instead of when I fire up the NS lookup, it is not exposing the gateway IP also. It is just showing you the private endpoint IP. That's the difference, guys. Okay. Once you create the private endpoint, again, I'm repeating, once you create the private endpoint, it will create one network interface card, as you can see here. Let me go to the portal. This is the network interface card that got created, and this is the IP 172.16.0.6 is the IP that got created for it. One NEC card and one IP got associated with it, along with DNS zone and all. This one. See, and host record got added automatically. This is called as host record. Anyone, if you are aware of DNS, I think I told something in my classes about DNS. So inside the DNS, you will have host records. So this host record got added automatically with the IP, with the associated IP. Any questions here? I know it's too difficult for you to grab, but this is how you have to connect your Azure SQL.
This IP is related to VM.
No, this is not related to VM. This is related to, if you see my VM IP, it is 172.16.0.5. This is 172.16.0.6. Let me show you. I'll just keep this aside. How to pull this? Okay, 1 second. Okay, if you see now, 172.16.0.6 is the network interface card IP. I mean, private endpoints IP. Let me show the private IP of my machine, virtual machine. Config. See, it is 172.16.0.5. This is the IP of my virtual machine, whereas this private endpoint created the next free IP, which is 172.16.0.6. And there is a network interface card. When you are having the IPs, you should have network interface card, guys. Without having the network interface card, it is not possible to get a dedicated IP. So inside, behind the scenes, you have the network interface card also. Let me show you that. This is the network interface card for my private endpoint. This is the name what I have given, right? If you remember, private endpoint is the name what I have given. And this is the card for it, network interface card. Okay. Questions? I know I just went a little, how can I say, internal, but this is just a basic guess. It's not internal at all. So I will do something from my end. Okay, and you as a DBA have to troubleshoot what happens, and I'll just create some few scenarios. Is it okay, or should I stop here? It will take another 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so now as a DBA, you have to troubleshoot why I'm not able to connect. Okay, so I'm just stopping the screen share for a second. And it will be super interesting, guys. Just a second. Okay. Yeah, so I'm back. I've done something. I will not tell you what I have done, but now I am a client and you are the DBS for me. So I'm saying that I'm not able to connect to my Azure SQL. So let me show you that. Let me go to my VM. Okay, so I'm trying to connect now. I am the developer or whatever it is. So I'm trying to connect. So it is not allowing me to connect. I will get some error. So now you are the DBS. You have to tell me what should I do. Where will you check first of all? This is Azure SQL. Boom. I'm not able to connect. What should I do now? Now it's time for you to talk, guys. And think that it's a very critical application and your clients are shouting for the connectivity purpose. What will you do as a DBA? Tell me fast. You have to answer. No clues, nothing. What will be your first step at least?
Need to
Firewall
check
connectivity.
whether
We can check the NS lookup.
That's first point. Okay, so let's do it. CLS NS lookup, and it is not able to get some IP for me. Something happened. Okay, so NS lookup is not working. Okay,
Yes.
what else? As a DBA, what will you do? Okay, I got the point. NS lookup is fine. And you will say, I'm not getting some IP, and you will talk to your network admins. That's fine. But then what is the next other step as a DBA that you will do?
Can we check the logs?
Where should I check the logs? That's the beauty. I'm not able to connect now. Where should I check?
Okay. In portal,
1433
I
port
think,
is
Vamshi, we need to go to the portal and check whether the
Okay.
service point as well as the
Okay, let
other
me go to the
points are
portal.
open
Yes,
to
I'm
connect.
going to the portal and my endpoints, everything is there. And my private access endpoint is there. It looks fine. So where should I go now? Anything
Have
that
you
you
added
want?
the firewall?
Yeah, nothing. Firewall. See, again, firewall is not at all required, guys. So we are connecting with private endpoint. Who said firewall again? I didn't talk about firewall, right? We are talking about private endpoint. Means we crossed that point. Firewall is just a basic way to connect. We bypassed that methodology at all completely. This is the beauty, guys. Imagine that you are in a critical situation as a DBA. What will be the next step? You have to say next, something like that. You have to be faster. Come on, these are the type of scenarios that I will create in my classes. So you have to think from different ways. Now I have shown you all the different ways. So now as a DBA, what should I do? As a DBA, I will tell you, my first step will be whether I'm able to connect using TNC, I mean test-net connection to the port 1433, right? So let's first do that. I'm not.
I said that same actually.
Yes,
The
I heard
telnet or yeah.
someone said that point. I agree that I'm not sure of the names, but let's grab this. Okay, and let's go here and see at least if this works. So no, it is not working. It's not working at all. So what can I do? I know you can take this and you can talk to your network engineers and you can ask them what's happening. But is there anything else that you can try from your end? This is what it differs, guys. So I'm going to show you something which is not being explored by many. Okay, so that's why I differ from others. Let me show you now. Okay, there
Yeah.
is one script that you can make use of, and it will straight away point to the exact error. So this is the script, guys. Okay, let me run the script. Okay, so I got few errors, something. Let's wait for it to complete. Okay, take this script and run, and it will show you the exact error. And now you can talk to your network team or whatever the team, Windows team, happily. Let's wait for it to complete.
Where we have to run this script on virtual machine?
Yes, from where you are trying to connect, you can run it from there. 1 second, guys. I need to connect for my office. So nothing great here. Okay. It created everything came up automatically. Let's wait for it 1 second. Looks nothing from my end. Okay, done. Okay, now let's see this. It's saying DNS resolution could not be verified. If you see this, it's straight away it is saying DNS resolution could not be verified. Something is happening behind the scenes, and it says something related to DNS. So what should I do now? You know what I did behind the scenes? I'll tell you now. Okay, so when we created the private endpoint, there is one associated DNS that gets created, right? So I go to the DNS here.
Yes.
So this is everything looks fine. But if I go to the private DNS zone, I already shown you that there is one record that gets created, one host record with type A. There are different types of DNS records, guys. I think there are 8 or 10 different DNS type records, but I deleted one of the host records. So now you are not able to connect. So now what you have to do is you have to add that record. How to add that record? Nothing but you just need to pass the SQL name, Azure AD SQL, and what is that IP what we added? I mean, what it got created 172.16.0.6. Okay, so let's create that A record with that name. Okay, once it gets created, and now let's go to our SQL and let's try to connect. And first we'll do NS lookup. And now we are back. We're able to fire the NS lookup. It's working fine. And let's check the TNC. Let's wait. Yeah, it is working fine. See, that's how. So I deleted that record, and it is very, very hard for the DBS to troubleshoot in this scenario. That's why I will always make use of this script to find out what exactly is happening. This is one scenario, guys. You have time for 2 more scenarios. Interesting or
Yes,
bad?
very interesting. Yeah, no, you can.
Yeah, that
take your time.
172 IP address, virtual machine of IP
No,
address.
it's
or
not virtual machines IP address. This is the private endpoint IP addresses. Okay, private endpoint. That's what I'm
where
saying
we
again
can
and
find
again.
that IP address?
If you see here, if you go to your private endpoint, let's go to your Azure SQL first, and let's go to the networking and private access. Click on your private access where you have created the private endpoint. Go to the DNS configuration. You will see this IP here or here. This is the NIC card with this IP. Okay, so I will create one more scenario with your permission, guys.
This IP is the next IP of like
Next free
VM.
IP. Yeah, next free IP.
Yeah.
I mean, it will take automatically. It's not you that are going to create that IP. Behind the scenes, Microsoft will pick the next free IP and they will create it.
Okay.
No, my question is, you added 172.116. That one where you added, you just showed me, so we have learned it. But that IP address 172, which is belongs to which one?
That IP
This is
addresses
NIC.
belongs to private endpoint. Private endpoint. Okay.
Okay.
So
as soon as we create the Azure SQL database, automatically it will
no,
create.
no. It will not get created. Once you create the private endpoint for your Azure SQL, then it will get created automatically. It's not once you create the Azure SQL. The Azure SQL should be there. Till now, we just discussed about the public methodologies. Okay, I don't know when you have joined, but this is how we are connecting till now using the public access. Now we shift to private. Once we create the private endpoint, then you will get all these things. I intentionally removed that IP from there, and you are not able to connect. Okay,
Vamsi,
yeah.
I have something actually for this DNS issue. So
Yeah.
when for the at the DBA end, actually, when we found the similar things when we are just in on-prem actually. So AG listener configuration for the new AG listener configuration, when we did it, then we go to that actually the Windows cluster. Then
Okay.
if it is not mapped, the AG listener name with that IP. So DNS is with not resolved. So
Yes.
that way, actually, listener will not able to connect. We found that in Windows cluster in SFC, that one mentioned NS record not entry. So that things we can find out in the virtual machine similar way, right?
Yes, you can do it. Okay. But in see,
Yeah.
this is Azure Pass. The target is Azure Pass.
Yeah,
You
right.
don't have logs and all. So the best way to
So that is the
troubleshoot
main
is,
point actually.
yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm stopping and I will create one more scenario quickly. So
Okay.
just wait for it. Okay, 1 second.
Generally, this thing will on-premises Windows team will take it, not the adding the records
No,
like AZ
no, I
listener
mean,
or what.
see,
Yeah.
AG listener is completely different. We are talking about a Azure SQL platform as a service, guys. So it depends upon the offices and
No, I mean, I
Yeah.
mean to say like DNS records, like the connection, like whatever the table, inserting the record, the IP address, just to.
see, that's the reason I told you, just run that script and pass that information to your network team if you don't have access. So they have to be certain
Okay.
proof, right? Okay, so that proof is nothing but that script. I have that powerful script with me where I can talk to my network engineers happily.
Okay. But
So,
without
okay,
script, we
but
can't
But record set
troubleshoot
will
in
create
general.
by the Windows guy, infrastructure guy, right?
See, the segregation of duties,
yeah.
it's all up to the environments.
Right.
Okay,
That
so
I understand.
yeah. So let's now come back again. So let's
here
just
I
a second,
created
guys.
SQL database. That one, if I wanted to connect through virtual machine, so there I have to run the script, right? Which you.
Test them. Okay, now it's not a scenario,
Where I
but
have
you
to
have
run it.
to 1 second, bro. 1 second. Sorry for that. Let me share the screen again. Okay. So now nothing great. I did something. Okay, nothing great. But I have to connect with my private IP addresses, right? I mean, when I fire NS lookup, I should get 172.16.0.6. Right. So that is what I should appear when I have the private endpoint. Let's see what happens now. Okay. So NS lookup, I'm firing this, but again, it's going to my public gateway. Even though I have my private endpoint, if you go here to Azure SQL, and if I go to my endpoints, private endpoint is still there, but unfortunately, it is not making use of my private endpoint, and it is going to public gateway IPs of Azure. Why? Why it is happening like that? Anything that you can think about? It's absolutely difficult for you to think. Okay, so I'll show you what I did. There is something more that you have to understand. So when you have the private endpoint but it is resolving with your public IP, that is not the right way. And again, they might ask us, our network team, I don't know. It's all about the segregation of duties. It depends upon your environments. I can't talk like that. Once you see this private link.database.windows.net, you should see the private IP only. It should not see the it should not refer the public IP. Okay, so I have done something. I'll show you what I've done. So I went here. Okay, and I went to private link database windows.net. The record is appearing, but still it is not resolving with this IP. Okay, it has to resolve with this IP, but it is not resolving with this IP. It is resolving with the public IP. So I deleted this virtual network link. Internally, again, a virtual network links get created. I just went here and I deleted this just for your information. See, I deleted the virtual network link. So I have to add this again to make this work. So let me show you now. Link name, I'll just say test live demo. Something, I don't know. Subscription is fine. I have to pick the right virtual network. My VMs are part of this domain VMs network. Okay, so I don't think this is required, but just to be on a safer side, I'm clicking on OK. So let it get created. Once it gets created, again, it has to resolve with my private IP, not with public IP when you have the private endpoint. Let's just wait for it to get completed. So are you getting the depth now? Depth at which we are going? Different scenarios?
Yes, Swam.
This
Yes.
is what I am aiming at for 5,000 guys. And people are laughing at me. Okay, it's okay, fine.
Not like that, Vamshi. Don't take it.
Okay, it got link status is in progress. It has to be completed, but just wait for it. Oh, come on here. It will take 2 minutes, I think so. 2 or 3 minutes in progress. Okay, it got completed. Good. Now, if I fire NS lookup, it has to show me 172. It should not show me 52. Got it? This is one more second scenario. Now let's go to the third scenario, guys. and this is very, very difficult for you to troubleshoot. Let's see this, who are the best now. Okay, in front of you, I'm deleting the endpoint, private endpoint. Okay, so what I've created, Azure AD SQL networking, private access. I'm deleting the private endpoint, remove. Okay, once I delete the private endpoint, then there is no way for me to connect with, I mean, when I fire the NS lookup, it will show me the public gateway IP, not the private. So let me show you that. It will take some time to reflect. Just wait for it. See, okay, now it is resolving the public IP. And now I will do something, and you have to tell me. I'll stop the screen share. Where is that? Stop. Okay. Delete. 1 second. I'm back now. It's for the best DBA. I want to reward this DBA as the best DBA if you resolve this issue for me. Share. Okay, so now let's go to the VM, and this is the error what I'm getting. Now, as a DBA, what will you do? Third scenario. I think this is third or fourth. Third, I guess. DBS. I am the client and I am shouting at you. Tell me, what should I do for the connectivity? You are the best DBS that I have recruited. Think this as a challenge and tell me what should I do. First step, again, back to the normal pace. First, fire the TNC. Okay, TNC is working fine. What should I do now? NS lookup is working fine. It is resolving with public IP because we deleted the private endpoint. It will take some time. Okay, so public IP is there and TNC is working fine. And still I'm getting this error. What should I do now?
Vamsi, is that server removed from that particular resource group?
No, I didn't do such bloody things. I didn't do that. The best DBA, I want to find who is the best DBA now.
VNet connectivity.
VNet connectivity means where should I do? What should I do? Okay, let's do one thing. Let's do one thing. First, I will show you. I will show you the different means now. Again, the beautiful thing I'll show you. I will come back. I will do the reverse engineering now. I'm clicking on this button now. Okay, 170 exception. Okay, clicking on save, and let's see if I'm able to connect now. Okay, I'm able to connect. Fine, because it will add that 0.0. That's the beauty. So definitely you will connect. I'm unchecking this. I'm clicking on save, and now again I'm trying to connect. Disconnect, connect, connect. Boom, failure. So I should now as a network team or some security team, I'm not allowing you to do this option. I'm saying, oh no, you should not do this. So what will be the next option for you? Okay, let's add the VM's IP, right? We are doing the reverse engineering, guys. So first thing, we have done the exceptions, and now coming back to the firewall rules. Let's come to the firewall rule again. Let's add the VM's IP. I think this is 20, 223, 205, 177. 20, 223, 205, 177. I'm adding the IP now. 223, right? 223, 205, 177. My VM, I will say. Okay, clicking on OK. I added the firewall rule. So definitely it should allow me to talk, right? When I have this. So let's go now and see if I'm able to talk. Boom, again failure. Now as a DBA, what will you do? Come on, we have 7 DBAs here. Someone has to answer this.
Service endpoint.
Service endpoint, it's deleted, right? We don't need service endpoint when you have the firewall rules, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we are doing the other way around, the reverse way.
Recording in progress.
210 class.
Enable SQL endpoints.
SQL endpoint. No, I'm saying when we have the rule itself, why I'm not able to connect. You got my point. when we did this, it allowed me. When we add the VM IP itself, it should definitely allow me to talk, right?
Any
Go-
changes made to the login?
No, login. I didn't do any changes. Okay, so this is out of scope for many. Okay, I'll show you what you have to do. If you get this 40914 error, remember the error, guys, 40914. Okay, I'll just talk this and I'll close off. I have to go now. Okay, and let's go to the domains VM VNet and go to your subnets. Okay, this is still tied now, still tied with the service endpoint. Delete this service endpoint, what I've created at the beginning. Okay, click this and save now. Just wait for it to get saved. Oh, come on. Added the VM IP, so it should definitely allow me to talk. Public IP itself I added, so there should not be any other means. So when you get that 40914, this is how you have to troubleshoot. Or else you can use that script, guys. You can use that script. It will tell you what went wrong. May not be exactly, but it will give you some idea. So okay, it got deleted now. Now let's go to our demo. Sorry, VM, and see, that's the beauty. And now if I select what is that IP, client network address IP. It got struck, guys. 1 second. I will copy both of them. Oh God, come on.
What we did, I just missed that point.
Okay, we added the VM's IP, public IP itself, but still we are not able to access the Azure SQL. Are you able to see my screen? Because I got some message saying internet connectivity is not clear. So just verifying with you guys.
Yeah, right. I missed that point actually. What we did.
We didn't do anything, guys. We were getting 40914 error. Okay. Even though we added the VM's IP,
Right.
VM IP to the firewall rules, still I was not able to access the Azure SQL. Yeah.
Right.
Let me go there. Let me go. Where is that? Yeah, this is the server. So let me go to networking. And if you see, my VM IP is there. Okay, I just deleted it. It looks like it got deleted. 1 second. My internet all of a sudden it has given me some trouble. Sorry for that. 20 223 205 177. Okay, my VM. So it is there now. Okay, I just added that. Okay, I added that IP previously, but still I was not able to connect. What I did to overcome that 40914 is I deleted the service endpoint from the subnet. I went to the subnets. Okay, where is that? I went to the subnet and I deleted the service endpoint for SQL Server, Microsoft SQL. I mean to say Azure Pass. Here it is now 0. Previously it was showing Microsoft SQL. So when you have that service endpoint enabled, it will not work.
We have to again add the service endpoint, or
no, we have to delete. We have to delete here. Okay, we have to delete.
Okay.
I came the other way around. That's what I'm saying. First,
confused service endpoint.
Yeah, you definitely will get confused. That's what I'm telling. There are so many things that are lined up here. So when you want to be the best, you have to understand all these different scenarios with the connectivity, especially about Azure SQL from VM. Any questions, guys? I have to close off. If you have any questions, you can message me on WhatsApp.
Just to understand this point, a service endpoint and also add a firewall rule. Both are is there. So that's why actually we are getting a connectivity error 40914, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's how you got it.
Vamshi, one question regarding private endpoint. We are using like one VM. If you want to connect another VM, there is no need to create another private link.
See, when you have another VM, what you have to do is, if that VM is in the same VNet, you don't need to do anything. But if your VM is in different VNet, you have to peer those VNets using peering or VNet to VNet gateway. Or if you're trying to connect from on-prem, it has to be site to site. if you are come, yeah, these are the three means. Same VNet, no need to do anything. Different VNet, peering or VNet to VNet gateways. Or if you're coming from on-prem, there should be site to site.
Okay.
I'll show you that diagram once, and I will quickly wind off. Where is that diagram? So this is how it looks, guys. So if you're coming from another VM, you have to do peering, or you can use virtual network gateways. Or if you're coming from on-prem, it has to be point to site or express route from on-prem without internet access, because you're using private endpoint.
Okay.
So this is the kind of depth that I'm going to drive in my classes, guys. Again, I'm not bargaining. I'm just saying that if you are interested, come and join with me. You will get the best. That is my responsibility, and I can assure you that. Just you have seen the demo itself, right? So if the demo itself is having these many scenarios, and with the MI in place, just imagine how depth that I'm going to go. Anyways, so I have to leave, guys. So talk to you later. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Vamshi.
Vamshi.